And welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Just Parlay Show here at the Max Wagers Network. I'm your co-host, Scott Reichel, and joining me once again is parlay for Chris King. And together, we're going to recap the Monday Night Football games. I know they're very entertaining and competitive, so we'll talk about that in a second. By the way, the games are terrible. And we're going to talk about the Tuesday card, which is basically baseball. That's it, right? I mean, we got nothing else to talk about.
Yeah, no CFL or, the WNBA's over. Congratulations.
Where's my Maction, damn it?
Yeah, well, we're still a couple weeks away from that.
I want the fun belt. I want my midweek college football action.
But, hey, we're only 4 weeks away from the start of the NBA as well. So, I mean, that's just around the corner, too. And then we'll have way too much stuff to talk about.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I know hockey's going to start out in a couple months as well. NBA, though, looking forward to it. Basketball has normally been my most profitable sport.
So I'm glad you're looking forward to it because as a Jazz fan, all I have to look forward to is 873 first-round draft picks in the next 6 years.
Well, on the bright side, your team wasn't going to win a title anyway with the course, so you got to hope for the victor sweepstakes and start from scratch. So we'll see what happens in the NBA. I got a couple of podcasts that are going to come out for the NBA in the next couple of weeks. But other than that, though, starting off with
we got to break down the NBA the way we broke down everything else.
We can. It's really up to you. I know football's definitely a bigger talking point for most people. No offense to the NBA, but the NFL and college football kind of run things based on actual viewership. We can talk about it. I'm going to be researching it anyway for the podcast, so we can if you want to, but that's really up to you.
Good to see AJ's is here. AJ's, I hope you enjoyed the competitive game at Highmark Stadium yesterday. I don't know if you saw, Scott, but Spencer Brown, the Bills' starting right tackle, had posted on Twitter about how great the Bills Mafia was while he was stuck in traffic because he couldn't get to the stadium.
Yep.
So it was I don't know if he ended up driving around or if they actually got a police escort for him. Last year they had to do that for Diggs before the home opener. But
are you a fan of the college system of just having a team bus, or do you think they should just get there whenever they want because they're professionals?
Well, I mean, do you think those people are all going to?
Well, I think the argument though is that if you have that many cars, then one person's likely going to be late. Where if you have everyone in the same car or bus, then you don't have to worry about it. That's kind of my point.
Yeah, that's true. I just wonder, you'd have to all meet somewhere to get on the bus, though, unless you're going to have a team hotel at home.
Yeah, I was kind of just spitballing, but I was kind of curious.
It's not a bad concept. I don't know what kind of response you'd get from the players.
I don't know either, because I'm sure a lot of them want to drive in their fancy cars and wear their own, I'd say unique outfits to the games. It's mostly the NBA, like Kuzma and Westbrook and Harden, but still, you get the idea.
What I'll do is on Sunday on Bucks Report, I'll ask Big Game James Canada and see what he would think as a former player in the Tony Dungy era.
But either way, to go through the games, I think we should go through them in order chronologically. They overlapped by, about an hour in, which I said was actually not that bad because the first game might be over in about an hour and a half, and it was because the Bills absolutely dominated. And then game 2 wasn't close either. So starting off with Buffalo, I didn't learn anything from yesterday. We liked the Bills. I thought that Diggs would torch the secondary. I said on here the Titans are not a good football team. And I think Derrick Henry's basically past his prime and arguably cooked. And I don't think I was wrong about anything in that game. Did you see anything that surprised you? Because it seemed like Tennessee came out, hung around early, which, I mean, you can kind of see coming. The Bills' fourth down play calling is still atrocious. That needs to be talked about. But besides that, the Bills did whatever they wanted. They outgained them by 300 or 400 yards. And the Titans don't have any weapons offensively, and defensively, they're not good either. So did you learn anything? Because I feel like everything we talked about kind of came to fruition.
Well, I mean, you're right. They do have to clean up those 3rd and 4th and 1 play calls. I didn't like the RPO where Allen then tried to throw it as he was going down. That wasn't
even the touchdown pass wasn't a great play call. Allen just scrambled and Diggs found himself open, but it was a pretty complicated 4th down play call. Just QB sneak the damn ball. You have a refrigerator at quarterback. Just run forward 2 inches.
Well, but they tried that last year when he lost his shoe against Tennessee. And
it was bad footing, I get it. But what do you think's more likely? A QB sneak mishap again, or trying to go RPO in the shotgun? I don't understand the shotgun on 4th and short. I need someone to explain it to me because we try to get more analytical, whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball with 3-point shooting, whether it's football. And yet it seems like no coach understands that Brady's converted QB sneaks for 20-something years on 4th and inches. Just sneak the damn ball. Like, I don't understand why you need to go shotgun. It doesn't make any sense to me.
The other thing I noticed, too, is I watched the officials call false starts multiple times on Buffalo on a guy who wasn't even on the field because they kept calling it on 75, and that was Van Roten. He was out of the game by the time they whistled for the second and third false starts. It's like, figure out who the hell you're calling the penalty on.
The numbers were rough. I actually agreed with the false start call on 4th and 1 because the Titans guy flinched, but I actually didn't think he crossed into the neutral zone. So I actually liked that call. It's a call you never see. Usually when the defense flinches, you automatically call it. I actually thought that he didn't cross the neutral. However, it was an interception. It was a hell of an interception, in my opinion, in the corner, but then the Bills took a penalty. It was in the final 2 minutes of the first half. I thought he picked it. They didn't review it at all. I think you can argue you might not have had full control. Maybe it would have stood. You have to review that. That was close enough to at least warrant a review, don't you think?
Well, to me, it looked like he didn't have control when he hit the ground. The ball
But
was
how do you
still
not
kind of
review
moving
that,
around.
though? You have to at least get a better look at it.
They should have reviewed it, but that goes back to, I've had issues with the instant replay system since they brought it back with it being in New York where they can just buzz in for the hell of it. I mean, it's been an issue for years, and it's not going to get any better. We're still going to have controversial plays, and at some point that's going to end up costing somebody a game. I mean, that they put it back in because of that whole thing with the NFC title game when Roby Coleman mugged, who was that? Michael Thomas, Tommy Lee Lewis, whoever it was for the Saints. That's why they brought it.
That's why they started reviewing the pass interference penalties. That got taken back out.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying that's when they started making the replays more relevant because for the longest time they didn't review anything.
I'm trying to think of the first play that actually warranted a review, or like what was the first, because it always happens as a reactionary move to some missed call, and they always over adjust saying this won't happen again. That's usually how it goes when you have these review legislation that ends up getting passed. I'm trying to think of the one.
Kind of like when Testaverde scored when he was tackled at the 3-yard line.
Could be, I don't know. Point is, I'm sure there was one moment that basically warranted having automatic review every time. I just don't know how you don't review that. I'm also not sure why NFL teams don't do what the Bills did in that case. I think it was an accident, but we saw it in baseball where Houston would intentionally get a guy thrown out on base because they wanted the other team not to challenge. So you would purposefully sacrifice something in the future so it'd be impossible to review. The Bills took a false start right after what should have been an interception or arguably an interception. It wasn't intentional, but I'm surprised teams don't do that. You sprint to the line, you try to run a play. Why don't you just commit a penalty and they can't review it?
True. Or just get up there and do what you see teams do all the time, just spike it.
I'm saying, but even if you don't have to worry about that, you can just flinch 20 yards down the field, and it's like, all right, false start. And it's like, all right, cool. You can't challenge this clear incompletion 50-yard gain that we just we'll sacrifice the 5 yards in exchange for the 40 that we just got. I don't know. I always try to push the envelope when it comes to rules in sports, trying to find loopholes, etc. The false start idea following a controversial completion or gain, or maybe just a knee being down that wasn't. I'm surprised teams don't take intentional penalties to avoid reviews.
Well, then they'll just implement that you can't do that.
But I'm saying usually they wait till the end of the year to start implementing this stuff.
True.
We saw the damn debacle with the false start situation in special team stuff with Belichick. He'd run an extra minute and 30 off the clock. That was a whole issue for about a year. You always solve it in the meetings at the end of the year, but I am surprised teams don't take more intentional penalties if it prevents a review from going against you.
Well, don't forget, then he got pissed when Tennessee did it to him in the playoffs.
Yeah, Vrabel did it, and it made perfect sense. But
and then Brady threw the pick at the end of that game to lose 20-12 or whatever it was.
That was his final pass as a Patriot.
But you look at the game. I think you're right. Derrick Henry obviously did nothing. They did a really good job, the front seven there, even without Settle and Oliver in the middle. they set the edges. They made him run east and west instead of getting that, momentum of going upfield where you can bowl people over.
Well, Juan also got hurt, which didn't help. But
true, but I mean, he's hurt all the friggin' time.
Yeah, I know. I'm not saying that he was going to perform well if Juan was playing. I'm just saying it definitely didn't help having to use a backup there on the offensive line. But I saw it in week 1. Henry looked slow. And I'm not going to hold it against him because Tennessee ran him into the ground for about 4 straight years. But he was off a serious leg injury. He came back prematurely at the end of last year and didn't look great. But I saw in week 1 against the Giants, he couldn't move. And I feel like it's going to be an issue all season long, especially when you can stack the box every play because Tannehill can't throw. The team has really no weapons. I thought Burks looked pretty good yesterday, but you can't really get him the ball that much. I don't think Derrick Henry looks great. And I'm going to call it out. And also, you have anything else you want to add for that game? Because it really just seemed like the Bills dominated, and they were my Super Bowl pick for a reason. They are the best team in football, and it's really not even close.
I mean, Henry, I read he was not hitting the backfield on 5 out of his 13 carries. They said he averaged negative 2.6 yards over or under expected yards per carry.
They kept calling tosses for a guy that has no explosiveness anymore. Like, I don't understand the play calling. They kept trying to give him the ball 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and he just couldn't get anywhere. Like, if you're going to run Henry at this stage in his career, I think it has to be up the middle. But I'm at least pointing it out there that you might want to look for unders on Henry rushing yards because it really does not look good. And Hilliard didn't even play, and he was better than Henry in week 1.
Yeah.
I don't think you can start limiting the touches for Henry because you're paying him that much money. But I think you got to talk about it. I mean, he really does not look like he's got much left.
And, you look at that secondary. Tennessee was playing so far off that, Buffalo didn't have to run the ball because they'd just swing it out there for 7 or 8 yards.
Yeah, Diggs just turned around and had about 4 separate receptions for like 9 yards. And then they still burned him over the top anyway. So Diggs, they wouldn't guard at the line of scrimmage. It was a free 7 yards whenever Allen wanted it. And then he actually took some shots, and he was still wide open. So,
yeah, and so was Kumaro. I mean, Kumaro had that nice catch down the sideline for 40 yards.
Even Gilliam was open on one deep play. He overthrew him, but he was still open.
Yeah, my brother said he was sad that he missed Gilliam on that one.
I'm just saying, if Gilliam, a fullback, is wide open 30 yards down the field, your defense has problems. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, when Gilliam scored that touchdown, he had no business scoring on that play. He should have been stopped in the backfield for a 4 or 5 yard loss. How do you miss tackling a fullback? And they missed multiple tackles
too.
Yeah, they missed multiple tackles on that play.
But my main takeaway was what I said before the season. Buffalo's the best team in the league, and I liked them yesterday because they had the extra prep time from Thursday night. And I don't think Tennessee's good, and they don't look good. So I am kind of going to pat myself on the back there because, I mean, the teams are who we thought they were. And
now Reichel's pulling a Barry Horowitz, patting himself on the back.
I'm just saying. I mean, we called that game to a T. And then the late game, or the later game, I guess, was the Vikings-Eagles. And I know that the value we talked about was potentially on Minnesota. There was no way I was going to bet on Kirk Cousins in primetime. And he sucks in primetime. Nothing has changed. They switched coaches. And Cousins still looked extremely nervous the entire game. And you can tell Minnesota was screwed in the first quarter because they had immediate back-to-back 3-and-outs. And it looked like they were calling the most conservative game possible for the first quarter. Then Cousins went on that scoring drive. A couple of, wide open receivers. He made a couple good throws. And the game was over after that. You had the bomb to Watkins. And Minnesota didn't score again. They didn't do anything.
They blocked that field goal. I thought they were going to do something there. And that came up empty as well. But yeah, Dalvin Cook had 6 carries for 17 yards. He didn't target Thielen until the fourth quarter. How do you go 3+ quarters without throwing to your number 2 receiver?
Especially when Slay has an interception or 2 at that point, you kind of assume that he would start throwing it to the guy not double teaming Justin Jefferson going in, but that kind of also goes into what I said in yesterday's game. I know you mentioned the Thielen over in receptions, which made sense if you wanted to go by trickle down theory and the fact that Jefferson would be basically triple teamed. Thielen finished with 4 receptions for 54 yards. I still don't think Thielen looks good out there. I don't think he has much explosiveness left. He's had a lot of injuries in the past, nothing serious like Henry's injury, but it's still a lot of small injuries that have added up over the years. Did you think Thielen looked good? Because I don't really see him generating much separation anymore.
No, he didn't look great, but I mean, you could use him, in, like I said, as a slot guy. A guy like, not to mention an ex-Bill, but Cole Beasley, who just signed with Tampa Bay.
I'm surprised he was still a free agent. I figured the Cowboys might have wanted him back because they don't have many receivers. But whatever. Either way, I get what you're trying to say. Move around the formation, try to get him more involved, give him a screen pass or two. But I don't think Thielen is that good anymore. And people want to talk about his touchdowns from last year. I get it. In short yardage situations, he might be fine. But you look at his yardage last year, it was terrible. You look at his injury history, he's had a lot of leg issues. I don't think Thielen's got much left in the tank. And
he might not, but when you're throwing to Johnny Munt in the first half and you haven't targeted Thielen, you got to wonder what the hell you're thinking as an offensive coordinator. I mean, they tried to force it to Jefferson. He was targeted 12 times. They targeted Irv Smith 8 times. He caught the dump off for the touchdown.
He also dropped a pretty big pass there in the middle of like the second or third quarter. I like Smith yesterday, but he had a touchdown. He really didn't look good either. He just got a bunch of targets.
Yeah, and, the Minnesota defense, for all the good they did in the win over Green Bay, they looked sucky yesterday. I mean, they didn't stop the run. They, like you said, they gave up the big pass to Watkins. Dallas Goedert had a big game. Devontae Smith caught all 7 passes that he was targeted with. And you made Jalen Hurts look like Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
26 of 31, 333 yards. Yeah, you sacked him 3 times. But who cares, because you couldn't move the friggin' ball to save your life.
26 of 31 for Jalen Hurts. That's absurd. That's inexcusable. And I know that Hurts has improved as a passer. There were a lot of really large windows. And the Watkins throw is either a blown in coverage or an awful defensive coverage because, he was wide open by 15 yards.
Yeah, I think it was just a blown coverage. It looked like the corner dropped him, thinking that a safety was going to be back there, and he ran right by Harrison Smith.
Yeah.
It was piss poor all around. But you look at Minnesota's possessions, 3 and out. They scored the touchdown, then 3 and out, then three more plays and a punt. Then they threw an interception on the drive to start the second half.
I was going to say, they had one. What'd they have? They had one drive with any first down of any kind out of like 4 possessions in the first half.
Yeah.
It was 3 and outs and a touchdown. You can't go 3
and
out on 3 separate drives.
4 3 and outs.
Sorry, 4 3 and outs and 1 touchdown drive out of 5 drives in the first half. I get that Cousins is awful in prime time, but at least take some shots. They came out so conservative, and they were already down 7-0. Hurts immediately led a touchdown drive. I believe it was 6 for 6 on the drive. And Minnesota just called a bunch of check down passes to start the game. And I'm wondering, you realize you're down 7-0, right? You're going to have to take some shots in this game. They just didn't do it. And by the time they started to, they were already down too much, and Cousins threw a bunch of picks at the end. I didn't think Cousins would perform that well in primetime because he never has. But I was not a fan of the play calling in the first half. It was way too conservative for my liking.
Yeah, second half, pick, an 11-play drive that covered 27 yards. So that's real effective. You went from your own 10 to the 37.
Just saying, you had 0 points as a whole in the second half. So by the time that Cousins started to open it up a little bit and the time the play calling resulted in a lot more shots downfield, you're already down 17 points. You waited way too long to be aggressive. And I know that the aggressiveness didn't work because Cousins threw 3 interceptions, but it's more principle. You can't – the whole issue that Cousins has kind of run into in his Monday Night Football career is the fact that it seems like his teams always go down early because they never take any shots early in the game. And you can't only start throwing the ball downfield when you're down 3 possessions in the second half.
Yeah, and they gave up 10 points in the final 2 minutes of the first half. And that was something Dan Patrick was talking about this morning. The Vikings, since the start of the 2020 season, have given up an average of more than 5.5 points a game in the last 2 minutes of a half.
Are you a fan of Dan Patrick? You watch this?
I was listening to him. I don't mind him.
He's fun.
I liked him when he was on SportsCenter. He's funny in Adam Sandler movies.
I was just curious because I think he's good. I didn't realize you listened to Dan Patrick.
Yeah, I listen to because we have not one but two different sports radio stations here because God forbid,
Fancy, fancy.
yeah, you get tired of listening about hearing about fucking Clemson, so you change the station and listen to something else. Um, but yeah, he was saying 5.5 points a game in the last 2 minutes of the first half. You can't win games consistently that way.
It's
Because
also
if
why
you,
Minnesota constantly blows leads and why they've been known to be chokers, because they constantly give up points in the final 2 minutes of the halves.
yeah, exactly.
But do you have anything else you want to add for either game? Because I'm not sure how long Tannehill has left as a starting quarterback. Probably a little bit longer because the division's so bad they'll be in contention.
Yeah, well, you were saying last night it should be relegated. I mean, you look at that division right now,
The
and
Jaguars are in first place.
the only team with a win is Jacksonville,
Yep.
and they were guaranteed basically to have somebody else have a win because you had Houston play Indianapolis, and they fucking tied.
Yeah, and then you had Jacksonville play Indianapolis, and yet you only have one total win with 2 division games so far.
Yeah, I mean it was, and Indianapolis, they got some issues, and it's going to be a rough week for them. One thing I did want to ask you about, get an early read on you, because now we've seen Buffalo. They've rolled the Rams. They've rolled Tennessee. Now they face Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins. I know everybody's high on Miami because of Sunday's game and coming back against a beat-up Baltimore team. What do you make of that game down in South Beach at Hard Rock Stadium?
Oh, from what I've seen in the past couple of years, the Bills absolutely murder Tua every time they play. I don't think they've had a competitive game since he's become the starting quarterback. The Bills win every game by what, like 3 touchdowns every time they play?
Yeah, Allen has won the last 7 meetings with the Dolphins. They've outscored Miami 258 to 123.
The thing is, Miami had the phenomenal comeback once again. I guess the only concern is the Bills on a short week, but I really don't care because they pulled everyone in the fourth quarter because they were up by 30 at the time. I think the Bills crush them. I still don't know if Miami's actually a very good football team or not. Now, don't get me wrong. It was a phenomenal second half performance by Tua, and the Ravens defense clearly was either gassed or fell apart.
Or both.
Tua, I was going to say, or both. Tua still wasn't very good in the first half. Like, the team still went down 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and had to come from behind. They couldn't stop Lamar Jackson in Baltimore for the entire first half. I have concerns about Miami's defense. I think Buffalo goes up and down, scores 30-something points, especially with Byron Jones still being out. I think Buffalo wins handily. I think that Miami had a very nice win. I give them props for it, but they still fell behind by 3 touchdowns to Baltimore. I think Buffalo comes out and smacks them, if you want my honest opinion. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe Tua proves me wrong. Buffalo's defense looks a lot better than Baltimore's right now, and the offense is better than Baltimore's. I just couldn't get over the fact that Miami couldn't get a stop in the first half.
Yeah, and like you said, Tua made some questionable decisions. Like you said, that deep ball where he forced it out there to basically nobody.
What do you have? He had 2 picks in the first half against Baltimore,
Yeah,
I think?
both of Marcus Williams. AJ said the Bills haven't played all their starters. James says the Bills are out for blood.
Gabe Davis also didn't even play yesterday. Didn't even matter.
Yeah, he didn't play, so they got production from, Kumaro. They got production from Crowder.
It was mostly Diggs, but, I mean, it didn't really matter.
I mean, but you're right. But you're right. Diggs had a big game. We said he was going to – you figured he'd go for at least 100.
I said 8 receptions, 120. I think he had, 10 receptions for, 140. Whatever.
Yeah, 12 for 148.
Yeah, close enough.
And 3 scores. So, I mean, they kept flashing the graphic on the screen. I don't know if you were still watching the game at that point. Diggs had more receptions and more yards than the entire Tennessee team.
Truth is, I actually just stopped watching at halftime of both games. The games were over pretty early on. I ended up doing a couple podcasts.
So you missed all the excitement in the third quarter when Tennessee, when Phillips had the ball on the Buffalo punted for the first time all season.
Yeah, and he muffed it. I saw the replay.
Yeah, hit him in the face.
I missed the interception touchdown as well. But yeah, both games were not good at all. And I can't even complain because the overall finishes on Sunday were so good that I wasn't going to be, greedy. But we thought one game would be competitive. Technically, we were right because the Eagles game was more competitive than the Buffalo game, but both games were terrible. That was kind of the main takeaway from yesterday. It was just a bad overall day for competitive football. But I'm sure a lot of people cleaned up in the public because I'm sure a lot of people had the Bills and a lot of people had the Eagles because you were fading Kirk Cousins. I got to assume the books took it on the chin last night.
Well, if anything, they would have given back a bunch of the money they won on Sunday.
I'm just saying, though, probably, but you're looking at the home teams dominated, the home teams covered. Kirk Cousins got killed, and the Bills, who were looking like the best team in the league, dominated again. I think the only thing that hurt was probably I'm trying to think of the totals, because primetime has been so good to the under, but I feel like people would blindly bet the over, and those split.
Yeah, I took the over in the Buffalo game, and the pick six and the extra point pushed it over the number.
That was also in the third quarter, so it wasn't even like a bad beat or anything. You just had 0 points of the final 19 minutes.
Yeah, because Buffalo didn't care at that point. I mean, they just kept handing the ball off after that. I mean, Keenum threw 2 passes, but nobody really cared.
Yep.
And Tennessee, I mean, credit to Hassan Haskins. He outrushed Derrick Henry.
Yeah, on 4 less touches. I do want to ask about Buffalo quickly, though. It's not really an important topic of conversation, but I want to bring it up. Buffalo didn't run the ball at all. They shouldn't have, because they had whatever they wanted in the passing game. But Singletary had 6 carries for 19 yards. Moss had 3 carries for 17 yards, but he got stuffed a couple times early in the game. In fact, he had 1 carry for 17 yards. So I believe he had 2 carries for 0, and then he broke the last one for 17. Cook actually looked pretty good. He had 11 carries for 53. He did have a 33-yard run there, so 10 carries for 20 yards besides the one outlier. What do you do with the backfield? I don't think they have many good options. It doesn't matter because Buffalo's incredible throwing the ball. But moving forward, who do you actually like the most in that backfield?
I think Singletary's still going to be the top option. Cook is going to be a third down kind of guy because he's elusive and he can do stuff out. You could probably split him out in the slot if you wanted to. You could have him and McKenzie in dual slots, or something like that. Moss is going to be probably your short yardage type of back, but he's got to do better than not picking up 3rd and 1.
Not only not picking it up, I think he might have lost like a yard or 2 on that play.
That's possible. But the thing was, yesterday, Allen only ran the ball once, and they talked about how, he ran it, 10 times or whatever against the Rams.
It was the 3rd down conversion. It wasn't even an intentional run. He just broke a couple tackles and picked up 11 on 3rd and 10.
Yeah, got away from Simmons on that play.
That was the first drive. He didn't have any rush attempts after the first drive.
Yep, and it's like you said, Tennessee didn't generate a whole lot of pressure.
They don't have anybody.
And they didn't have any. They couldn't play coverage because they kept playing 5 or 6 yards off because they didn't want to get beat.
Once again, they didn't have
beat anyway.
Tennessee does not have a good overall roster. They're not good at anything. And you could make a serious point that Derrick Henry is the best part of their team. And what we've seen in the first 2 weeks of the season, he might be cooked. Tennessee could implode and win 6 or 7 games. The roster
it's
overall
still be in contention for the AFC South title.
That's why we thought that they'd be in contention because the division's so bad. But you look at Tennessee's roster, it sucks. And we talked about it 2-3 weeks ago. They're not good on paper.
That's true. I mean, when your top tackler is Roger McCreary, the rookie from where is he from? Auburn?
I believe so.
And he makes 11 tackles, and they're all solo tackles because Stephon Diggs ate you for lunch, and you're just trying to tackle him after he's got the ball. I mean, you look at, and then Byard had 7 tackles. Byard's, he's a good safety.
But he's a safety. He shouldn't be second on your team in tackles.
But when you don't have any corners, like the problem was yesterday, and I watched Chris Jackson limp off again I watched him last year when they played Buffalo, and it seemed like every other play he was limping off the field with something, but he got absolutely clobbered on that 33-yard run by Cook because the smart thing is if you're a corner and you see a guy like Deion Dawkins running at you, you probably shouldn't stand in the way.
Yeah.
Jack Parkman said in Major League 2, don't stand on the tracks when a train's coming through.
Mm-hmm. But Tennessee's not very good. Buffalo is. Philly wasn't my pick to win the division. I believe we agreed on that.
Yep.
I have that. I have the Cowboys also, their win total under. I wasn't expecting them to beat Cincinnati, but Cincinnati might just be a train wreck, so I'm not exactly sure what to expect moving forward from them. Other than that, though, Philly looks really, really good. They also have a very easy schedule. They could be the 1 seed. That's how easy their schedule is. Look it up. Their schedule is an absolute joke. And the only tough games they have are all at home. So I think Philly's got a good shot to potentially win 13 games. So we'll talk about that potentially in the next couple of weeks. But I think it's time to officially move on. We talked half an hour about the NFL because the card today is not very good. But I do want to briefly segue before getting into the actual plays that you have. I want to talk about our sponsor, Caesar Sportsbook. They have a great deal for first-time users of their app or website. Get up to $1,250 of free bet insurance. Download the app today. And as always, check the state's age limits and bet responsibly, most importantly. Besides that, though, my co-host Chris does have his premiums for parlays as well every day. Check the link in the show box below if you want those picks. And also check out Picks and Parlays, Winners and Whiners, and the Max Wagers Network for free picks on YouTube every single day. But now that we got that out of the way, time to move on to your picks for the Tuesday card.
Yeah, I send out way too many parlays because I send out 7 every day. And then, it gets to be complicated when there's not a lot of stuff to work with.
Just saying, though, 7 parlays. You're getting bang for your buck, though, if you're paying for it.
Yeah, I had 3 yesterday that hit. So
there you go.
Can't complain about that. I mean, people will say, well, you were 3 and 4. Well, you try and pick fucking 75 different combinations to see how it pans out. Steen said Henry's washed up 900 carries in the last 3 years in 39 games. Historically, no back comes back from that kind of use. Ask Larry Johnson.
Not to mention the actual leg injury that he had last year. So not only is he just spent based on the mileage, but he also had to recover from an injury last year that, as far as we know, he fully recovered from. But I'm not sure if it took any bit of explosiveness from him. You might really want to take unders on Henry because his yardage prop's probably still going to be in the 80s, maybe even the 90s in some matchups. I wouldn't take the over.
I wonder if they've got one out for this upcoming week yet.
It's a little early, so I'm not sure
it might be too early for it, but I'm just going to take a quick glance and see if we got anything on that because I'm curious because you're right, because he did nothing yesterday. I mean, granted, he's going to face some more piss-poor defenses down the line.
Play the Raiders next week, so maybe he can go for something, but I just don't see it. I see the explosiveness being, I'd say, 60% of what it used to be.
Yeah, we'll have to come back and look at that later in the week because they don't have numbers out yet, but it'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
I'm assuming somewhere in the 80s. If I
think
guess 84.5.
You're thinking that high, even based on
I think facing the Raiders helps.
Well, that's probably true.
I'm going to guess mid-80s if I had to guess.
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders didn't look all that great. They couldn't stop. That was interesting when Arizona went to the option in that game against the Raiders, with pitching it out with Williams and Eno Benjamin and all that.
And how'd it go?
It actually worked.
Yeah, because the Raiders can't stop the run. So that's why I think Henry's going to have numbers.
The option.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless they put Willis in there. Now, take note, I don't have the Dodgers up here because, I mean, if you want to know if the Dodgers are going to beat the Diamondbacks, you might have been living under a rock. The Dodgers won again yesterday. They're 12-3 against Arizona. They play a doubleheader today. First one's in about half an hour. It's Davies against Grove. The nightcap is Trey Jameson against Tyler Anderson.
I heard the name the drink after Jameson.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But I like the Dodgers in both those games, but I wasn't going to put them up because the numbers are ridiculous. Same with Atlanta. It's Charlie Morton versus Richel's favorite pitcher to fade since Yohan Adon isn't around.
I got to push back a little bit. Corbin was headed for the loss record, and he turned it around.
Yeah, he's 2-2 in his last 5 starts. I'll give him that.
That's not bad. That's not bad, man. Of course, I'm still picking Atlanta to win. I'm not going to pick the Nationals, but
I was going to say a deeper look at those numbers will show you he's got a 2.90 ERA, but his FIP is 4.46.
Just saying, though, 2.90. Like Corbin was on pace to really just not even break the record, but shatter the record. I don't think he's had a loss in his last couple outings, but
he's good. He's 2-2 in his last 5.
Okay, still, but you're looking at the numbers. He got shelled against Philly, but the other 3 starts around that: 6 innings, 1 run against Baltimore, 7 innings, 1 run against the Mets, 6 innings, 2 runs against the Reds. He's been decent, so I'm not picking him to win this game. All I'm saying is that if you're blindly fading Corbin and you want to take a team total, you might want to tread a little carefully because Corbin's actually been okay.
Well, but here comes the counter to that, and that counter is the fact that he's facing Atlanta. Corbin has faced the Braves 3 times this season.
He's gotten shelled every time.
He's 0-3 with a 988 earned run average, a 2.415 whip. He's given up 26 hits over the course of, I think it's 13 and a third innings. I wrote this up last night, so I'm just pulling my sheet back up. Yeah, let's see. 26. The Braves hitters are 26 for 66. 3 doubles, 3 homers, 7 walks, 15 strikeouts. So their slash line is 394, 452, 576.
Yeah, and to go through the individual starts here, 2 starts in July, 5 innings, 6 runs, 5 earned, 6 innings, 4 earned, and then they faced off early in April, and he went 2 2/3, 6 runs. So he's basically giving up 4 runs minimum per start against the Braves. They can still go over the team total. I'm not saying that Corbin's going to pitch well tonight. I'm just saying he has looked better recently than his overall season stats. So just keep that in mind when you want to fade him.
Yeah.
That's my only point. I'm not picking the Nationals tonight.
Right. One other number, the Braves on balls in play against Corbin, average is 479.
Well, your average should be high when they go over the fence.
Well, that's true.
So
James asks, how about the run line for the Dodgers? In which game are we talking about? With Grove, I haven't seen a ton about. I know he's pitched a little bit. Davies is prone to giving up runs.
I mean, Davies has no velocity on anything, so you're assuming that the Dodgers might get to him early and often there. Maybe a team total if you think that Grove might struggle, so you could just fade Davies entirely. I'm not a Davies guy. To look at the later game though, with the Dodgers with Anderson on the mound against Jameson, I don't know enough about Jameson.
He's made 1 start.
I know he gave him no runs. I just don't know what to fully think about him. I mean, of course, I like Anderson.
I can tell you he sucked in the minors because his ERA is over 6.
Yeah, so maybe all the above.
Yeah, in the minors,
I don't know.
Yeah, in the minors this year, split between Amarillo in the Texas League and then Reno in the PCL. 7-13, an ERA of 6.31 in 26 appearances, 25 starts. He gave up 21 homers. He averages about a strikeout an inning, but he gives up 10.3 hits per 9 innings. Walks more than 3 per 9.
So he averages more hits allowed per inning than strikeouts.
Yeah. He's got 132 and 132 and 2/3 as far as punch outs in the minors. He had 5 in his first start in the majors in 7 innings, but I don't have a ton of faith in Arizona's offense, and I don't really want to put any stock in a guy who's made 1 start.
And the bright side, Kimbrel pitched yesterday. Gave up a run, obviously.
He did
might not be available
play, though, so I mean, there was that.
Oh, he also hit back-to-back batters to load the bases with no outs. So
well, I didn't say he was good.
I'm just saying. He shouldn't. You could argue he shouldn't be on the playoff roster. That's how bad he's been. But still, he might not be available today.
Yeah, James said the second game. Yeah, I would back Anderson on the run line there.
Yeah.
JC said 90% of parlays I bet lose with 1 loss. Yeah, that happens all the friggin' time. Happened yesterday because I would have had 2 other ones except the Vikings choked.
Yep.
Round Robins. Scott, what's your take on Round Robins?
I think they're fine. It's a little bit tricky if you're unfamiliar with it because you have to divide up X amount of money per parlay. And if you win all of them, your payout's going to be less than it would have been had you just done it straight, obviously, because you're kind of limiting your risk there. I'm fine with it, but people always wonder, how much do I actually like these picks? How much should I put on each parlay? There's a whole lot of other variables to consider, but I think if you are worried about constantly losing parlays by 1 pick, or maybe you just like a lot of plays and you're afraid as a failsafe, one of them doesn't go your way, and you want to leave with something, I don't mind it. You?
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, there's a lot of variables to factor in, but, it gives you more opportunities to try and make up for some of what you would lose as opposed to just throwing it out there on one. I know Steen's a fan of them.
Yeah.
But it's a good way to, like you said, to hedge your potential losses.
Yeah, because if you win like half of your picks, you can still make money.
Yeah, because it can get frustrating. I agree with losing 1 game. Thanks, Minnesota. That's what I get for trying to back an underdog. But, what can you do? Yep. But getting to today's stuff here, I'm going to take the Marlins at home against the Cubs. It's Sampson against Pablo Lopez. Lopez looked good his last time out. And, I backed Miami yesterday as well. Edward Cabrera beat up Wade Miley. That's not really a surprise, is it? But Lopez's last start went 6 2/3, gave up 2 runs.
Well, Miley is surprising. I'm surprised he's still alive. I haven't heard that name in a while. Did he just come off the IL or something?
Yeah, he's been on the IL most of the season. He's only made like five starts.
Better late than never. You bring him back with like 2.5 weeks left in the season. You got to get that money's worth.
Well, I mean, the good thing was he was cheap because the Reds put him on waivers.
Yeah, you can argue that maybe be worth flipping because I'm sure the Reds would actually kill for him now.
That's true.
Who's in that rotation? I think the Reds would actually like him in that rotation.
I'm wondering about the White Sox rotation too, because you're looking and they threw Vince Velasquez the other day.
That's never a good sign. You never want to go Vince Velasquez.
When you go Velasquez and Davis Martin in back-to-back games, you got to wonder what the hell's going on with the White Sox.
Yeah, it's not good.
I thought Cueto was supposed to pitch, and then he got scratched Saturday, and he was going to pitch Sunday, and then he didn't pitch Sunday either.
Yeah. He's also like 50, so maybe he just threw a lot of innings and his arm couldn't handle it anymore.
Well, that could be. But looking at the board here, I'm also going to go with Stripling to go at least 5 1/3 against the Phillies. Seems like a low number for Stripling, who's pitched pretty well in recent outings. Philadelphia seems to be heading the wrong direction at the wrong time.
Well, Philly's been a streaky team all season long, so that's not exactly surprising.
But, I mean, they've lost 4 in a row coming into this when they were swept by Philadelphia not by Philadelphia, they were swept by Atlanta over the weekend. I guess the plus side is they're at home. So maybe that'll work in their favor. But you look at Stripling's last few starts.
He's been good.
Yeah, he's gone at least 6 innings in each of his last 6, dating back to mid-August. Going 5 1/3 seems a little low, doesn't it?
It does. I guess the argument could be Toronto had a day off yesterday, so the entire bullpen's fresh, so maybe they could pull him early, but I think he'll probably go over.
I mean, I'm looking here. Each of his last 6 starts are quality starts. He went 6 1/3, gave up no runs against the Orioles on August 17th. Then 1 run and 6 against Boston, 3 runs and 6 against the Angels, 3 runs and 6 against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, you just have to worry about him not getting shelled. I mean, that's basically what it's going to come down to.
And he beat Philadelphia in his first start against them just before the All-Star break at Rogers Center. Through 7 scoreless, he gave up just 2 hits.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, he got 2 runs, none earned in an 8-2 Toronto win. On the other side, we talked about the Mets yesterday. Corbin Burns does not look good, Scott.
No, and it's funny because you mentioned Alonso, and I said, well, Burns throws a lot of strikes, and Alonso's a free swinger. And I believe he had a home run on like an 0-2 or a 1-2 count. Just threw a pitch right down the middle, and Alonso crushed it. Yeah, Burns has not been good down the stretch. Yeah,
I had Burns under 6.5 strikeouts because he had been so downhill with that lately, and he didn't get there. So that worked out. The White Sox over the Guardians. Who would have thought at this point that we'd be talking about the White Sox playing better baseball without Tony La Russa?
This series probably determines the division, right? I mean, you can argue that if Chicago wins 1-2 or wins 2-1, I should say, in the series, then maybe you have something going. But they're 3.5 back now, I believe. If Cleveland wins this series, I personally think it's curtains, but we'll see. Do you agree with that? Or do you think it's too premature?
No, I think you figure after this series is over, there's going to be 12 games left because Cleveland's 80 and 67, Chicago's 76 and 71.
Yeah. So mathematically speaking, there's either 15 games left or, basically 15 games left.
Yeah, there's 15 left now. By the time the series is over, we'll have a dozen. This one, I'm leaning towards the White Sox. It's Cease going against Savale, and I can't trust Savale to do shit.
I was going to say, Cease is also very good, and I stand corrected, by the way. The White Sox are 4 back.
Yeah, that's because Cleveland won yesterday and Chicago was off. Yeah,
if Cleveland wins this series and they go up 5 with basically 12 games left, I think it's over. If Chicago wins this series and cuts it to 3, then maybe you have a race on your hands. And if Chicago sweeps, then you got a serious race on your hands.
Yeah, as I say, because then it's only a 1-run or a 1-game margin.
For the record, I don't think Chicago is going to sweep, but
yeah, Savale has no wins in his last 9 starts.
No, the White Sox should win, but it's also this could be the division right here because if the Guardians beat Cease with Savale, I think the division might be over anyway. Because I mean, this is the game that you need to have if you're Chicago. You have your ace on the mound against Savale. You really can't ask for a better spot to gain a full game in the division race. You need to win tonight.
And on the flip side, too, of that, Savale hasn't pitched in 3 weeks. He's been on the shelf.
Chicago better win tonight. If not, I think that they're cooked in the division.
Yeah, because I don't think you can really rely on Lance Lynn or Giolito to
and you mentioned Velasquez was pitching. Cueto's potentially on the shelf. Their arms are falling apart right now.
Yeah, I'm going to look and see if there's anything about Cueto because it was weird.
I don't think he's on the IL, though.
Yeah, I just wondering what it was that they said he wasn't going to pitch him other than, like you said, okay, he's cleared to start Thursday. He was apparently had an illness.
Okay.
But he's now been cleared. It said he was experiencing bouts of dizziness. So there you go. But he'll pitch Thursday in the finale, so I guess that means you won't see Davis Martin or Velasquez. I just wonder if you're going to see will they line up Lynn and then Cueto? Will they put Giolito in and then Cueto and save Lynn for the weekend? I think you'd have to roll Lynn and Cueto and bump Giolito, don't you?
Yeah, I think you have to. But the point is, it's kind of dire straits for the White Sox rotation.
We're not talking money for nothing and your chicks for free either.
Yeah. Well, the money has been for nothing because they're paying a lot of money and they're not going to win the division.
Buddy's House of Food said he loves round robins. You just have to put up more money.
Yep.
So that covers the 2s for today. We'll take a look at the 4 for the show, and that takes us to Texas, where we've got the Angels against the Rangers. Of course, the Angels did nothing yesterday as we talked about it. Seattle had to get back on track, and they did in a big way as Carlos, I don't play guitar, Santana homered twice, including a grand slam that broke that game open. Tonight, the Angels go with Patrick Sandoval, who Scott probably is the best 5-9 pitcher in baseball with an ERA of 2.99.
Been incredible. Last 7 starts, 1.69 ERA.
Going against Cole Reagans.
There's my play of the day.
Was it?
I got the Angels first 5. I don't want anything to do with the Angels bullpen. Just give me the first 5.
I thought you were going to say you didn't want anything to do with either bullpen.
No, because the Rangers bullpen's technically better. Also, Sandoval really does not go much length. He'll occasionally have a complete game shutout, which was kind of fluky, but he usually goes about 5 2/3.
Yeah, 5 2/3, 6.
So I'm not going to bother. I took the first 5. Trout had a day off yesterday, but it was for maintenance, so he's fine. Him and Ohtani should be in the lineup.
Yeah, that's why I didn't take Trout out of my shot in the dark part because I just left him in there and just changed the numbers.
But I'm with you. I took the first 5 just because I only want Sandoval against Reagans, but I do like the Angels in general. Texas has lost 16 of 21.
Yeah, not a good stat.
It's rough.
I'm going to take the Blue Jays over the Phillies. Like I said, we've talked about Stripling already. Kyle Gibson going for the Phillies. Gibson has been one of those guys you can't figure out because he'll either pitch really well or he'll pitch like, Rick Vaughn at the start of Major League 2 when he starts naming his pitches.
Yep.
Anything good you want to say about either one of those teams? Other than they're both in wild card spots right now?
Gibson needs to practice his eliminator because it doesn't work too well.
Well, that's a bag of pus.
Yeah.
Nick Lodolo of the Reds, over 6.5 strikeouts.
I actually like Lodolo. I think he's good.
I think,
comparatively speaking, the rotation's so bad he looks like Randy Johnson, but I think he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's coming off back-to-back 11 strikeout performances against the Brewers and the Pirates. And I know you're saying, well, it's the Brewers and the Pirates. Who gives a rat's ass? But, those guys are major league hitters too, allegedly. But, Boston, they seem to have pretty much mailed it in at this point, wouldn't you say?
As they should have.
And they're not necessarily a great lineup. And Lodolo being a lefty, he can make some hay that way as well. And it's got Nestor Cortez. Are you glad Nestor's back? Severino's going to pitch tomorrow?
There's some underlying conversations on Yankees Twitter. It's not going to happen, but it's worth potentially discussing. Should Cortez be should Cortez be the game 1 starter in the playoffs? There's been some talk about it on Twitter because Cole has not been very good. Cole's going to start game 1. They're paying him too much money, but I do love the actual discourse. I just find it very amusing that Cortez is being paid roughly like $30 to $40 million less, and there's talk about him potentially starting game 1. I find that kind of amusing.
Well, if you were Boone, how would you slot the Yankees rotation in the playoffs?
Okay, so first of all, 4 starters. I'm not going to try to make a case for 5. You're going to go with a 4-game. We're going to go with a 4-starter rotation. I think Cole's going to start game 1. He's getting paid too much money. I think he has to start game 1. Cortez, I only want pitching at home because he's been so good at home, and on the road he's been mediocre. So I probably have Cortez at 2, assuming you have home field in the first round. Then for the 3rd starter, it gets tricky. Probably Tyone. Tyone will be the 3rd starter because he's actually been consistent this year. The 4th one's tricky. Do you go Germán or do you go with Montes? Because Montes has been terrible, but you also just traded for him. I think Germán would be the game 4 starter. I think Montes is coming out of the bullpen.
So you'd have Montes and Severino coming out of the bullpen?
As of right now, yeah. Severino, I think, has to come out of the bullpen. He's not going to have enough actual,
Yeah, he's not going to have enough build-up.
His arm's going to be too rusty to actually go 5. I think he'll be a mid-relief guy anyway. The Montes situation's tricky because Montes has been so bad since they traded for him. I think he can't start. So I think if you're asking right now, Germán's been good for the last couple outings. I'd probably pick him as game 4 if I had to pick it.
Do you like Cortez's strikeout potential here facing the Pirates?
Yeah, I think Cortez is a very good pitcher. And I think the Yankees have a really good shot to put a full stranglehold on this division. You have the Pirates who are 27-49 on the road. I said before the season started, I thought they would lose 100 games. It didn't look good early, but they're 8 away. So they got a shot at reaching 100. But the Yankees are 50-22 at home. Cortez has been incredible at home. I have to like Cortez in this start. I think he'll pitch well, and I think you're going to end up seeing him probably go 6 innings, 7 strikeouts, give or take.
Now, are they going to stretch him out? Because he only threw 65 pitches against Boston in his last start.
I thought he also struggled in that outing.
No, he gave up 1 run on 3 hits, struck out 7.
But how many innings did he pitch?
5.
Okay, I thought that he got into trouble a decent amount. But okay, I guess it was better than I thought it was. I don't know. Potentially, we'll see.
Because this will be his 3rd start since coming off the IL.
They're also off a day off. So I'm not sure if they're going to ramp up the pitch count incrementally or if they have a full bullpen. So maybe they'll bring in a long relief guy and kind of piece it together. I'm not sure.
Even if they run him up to 75 or 80 pitches, you have to think he can get past this number, especially facing Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh swings at everything, so yeah.
And my thought process was, I was looking at this, you know who O'Neal Cruz reminds me of when you stick him in a leadoff spot? A guy that used to play for your team, and he played for mine.
I was going to guess Curtis Granderson.
Alfonso Soriano.
Okay. I thought Granderson was a decent call.
Yeah, Granderson's a decent call too, but Soriano was one of those guys who would bat about 240, but you put him in the leadoff spot because you had the chance of going up 1-0.
I got distracted by the lefty portion of it, and Granderson also batted a leadoff for the Yankees for a little bit. I think either or could work.
But I mean, O'Neal Cruz is not a good leadoff hitter, batting 221.
No, but he has speed, and when he hits the ball, when or if, it tends to go pretty far.
Ryan says, do we like a Yankees and Braves money line parlay? I guess if you want to pay -3 something on each of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the situations where you're going to be like, sure, because the Braves should win and the Yankees should win. I'm also not a big fan of huge money line parlays in baseball of all sports. Like college football, I'm fine with because the best team usually wins.
Because everybody can take Alabama at -50,000.
Basketball, too. Baseball's always volatile. So I try to stay away from money line baseball parlays, but I think both teams are going to win tonight.
Yeah, I think both teams are going to win. I'm just, the tough part is at -303, which is the best line that I see on both of those teams. Your ROI is kind of, deflated to nothing.
Yeah.
But by the same token, if you look at the run lines, the Yankees are -145 at -1.5. And the Braves are, well, they're higher than that. They're -159. But, I mean, that's still a better return than -303 on both.
Yeah.
And the Pirates have now switched starters. They've now gone to Luis Ortiz is supposed to start instead of, I don't remember who the hell they had slotted originally. But I think, the Yankees should be able to put up some runs. And we know Pittsburgh, like Scott said, is a terrible road team. And they don't do a whole lot offensively as it is.
Yeah, and offensively, the Yankees have actually been decent lately. So perhaps they can keep it rolling.
Yeah, especially against a piss-poor lineup. and playing at home.
Mhm.
And meanwhile, Washington is Washington. They got a lot of free swingers in that lineup. In Atlanta, outside the Dodgers, you'd probably have to say they have the deepest lineup in the league.
I think so. But anyway, you want to move on to the shot in the dark?
Yep.
Cool.
Ryan said it's minus 150 for the money line parlay on those two.
I don't think it's worth it in baseball. But
for the shot in the dark, we'll take a look at some of these guys. Well, Corey Seager, Scott, been pretty good for Texas this year, even though nobody really talks about him because, I saw somebody put up a meme where, he's
the war comparison with him and Semien.
Yeah, you saw that one?
Yeah,
or was that you?
Foolish Baseball, I think, that posted.
Oh, yeah, that's who it was. He's been quietly good. I mean, if Texas had some pitching, they might have been able to make some noise this year.
Well, he had that streak. He had like 6 straight games with a homer, and then that was the only time anyone ever talked about him for the entire season.
Yeah. Trout, like you said,
I think he might go yard tonight.
You think so?
That's not a hot take. He's Trout, but Reagan's is awful. He's also a lefty, and the fact that you have Trout and Ohtani together, you actually have support now for either of them. I feel like I have to like the Trout to go yard, or maybe even Ohtani. I think they get to Reagan's early and often.
Yeah, Reagan's has given up 5 homers in 25 and a third innings at the major league level this season. Still looking for his first win after 6 starts. Hey, Pete Alonso did us right yesterday. Today he faces Aaron Ashby, who's coming off the DL, Scott.
It was going to be my honorable mention for my play of the day, but unfortunately when I was recording it, the line was not out yet for the Brewers game, so I couldn't do it. But I have to like Alonso to dominate. Ashby's, 2-10? He's terrible.
Yeah, he sucks.
Yeah, he's not.
And that's no lie. Surprisingly, the line on that game isn't that bad because I put the Mets down on one of my parlays. And like you said, the line wasn't out, so I just put Mets.
Because what is the line?
It is now. The money line shows the Mets at minus 114. The highest is minus 122.
And Carrasco's pitching, right?
Yep, Carrasco and Ashby.
I got to like the Mets in that one, especially with Ashby off the IL. I mean, worst case is Mets first 5, and you just hope that Ashby sucks. So
yeah, run line is Mets plus 145 at minus 1.5.
Unless the argument is the Mets just clinched a playoff spot, so they might be hung over.
Yeah, but they can't afford to be hung over with Atlanta right behind them.
That's the point. So I'm trying to think of any argument you could make. I think that's the only argument there is. But I like the Mets in the game.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering who, is going to pitch some of these games down the stretch. I see this. Milwaukee says Lauer is questionable Friday because he's been on the shelf. Peralta's still not going to be back with his shoulder inflammation until the end of the month at best. We talked about how Burns has struggled. So that leaves you Woodruff as pretty much the lone guy standing because Hauser only lasted 3 innings in his last start. And we talked about the summer of George yesterday. He hasn't been great.
No, their whole rotation has been underwhelming. Woodruff's been fine, but even Burns has struggled.
Yeah, and that's the problem is they banked on that rotation, A, staying healthy, and B, winning games, and they haven't been able to do it. Like you said, Ashby's 2-10, his ERA is 4.58, but his WHIP is 1.43, and those kind of numbers aren't going to get it done.
Yeah.
Buddy says the Mariners on the money line and the over. Let me just look because Luis Castillo and J.P. Sears. I like Castillo. I think he was a good acquisition by Jerry DiPoto.
They gave up a lot, but it's clearly worth it because Seattle's probably going to the playoffs. So that's
for the
worth
first
it in
time
itself.
in eternity.
First time since they set the win record at the time.
Yeah, I actually lived in Seattle that year.
It was a good year until they played the Yankees.
Yeah, well, I'm not a Mariners fan, but I mean, I
meant locally, but yeah.
Yeah, I went to Safeco Field for the second game after it was opened when they played the Diamondbacks.
Underrated stadium.
Yeah, it's a nice park there. Get a good breeze off the water and stuff. But I can see it going over. I mean, Oakland gives up a lot of runs. I mean, your buddy J.P. Sears is going for the A's, but
I like them, but he hasn't been as good lately. So
yeah, I wonder if he's kind of hit a wall of sorts.
He might have.
Devers over 1.5 total bases. It's the Red Sox and the Reds.
Yeah.
Playing in that bandbox, anything can happen. Ramirez over 1.5 total base. He's plus 150 because it's Cease. But Cease, I don't know. I don't see him going 9, which means he's going to get at least one at bat against
the bullpen. Somebody,
yeah.
maybe even Hendricks. I don't even know.
Yeah, BJ said he just put a ticket in for the Braves and Mets 2-teamer.
Good luck, BJ.
Yeah, he said both teams playing for something. He loves the value. That's a valid point. I mean, there's a lot at stake for those teams, and they'll meet up next week.
Yep.
By the same token, I said Devers. I'm going to take the Reds over the Red Sox. Scott, you have anything to say about Brian Bello?
He's been better lately, but I like the pitcher for the Reds more. And we said before, both teams don't really care about the games. You're going to be plus money on a team that might have the better starting pitcher. Plus 200 on the run line, I like. They're at home. Maybe the Reds can get something going.
True. Castillo over 7.5 strikeouts at plus money. I'll take it. It's the A's. They've been striking out basically 1 out of every 3 plate appearances over the last month.
It feels like 1 out of every plate appearance.
Well, that might be certain games. You never know.
Yeah.
Christian Javier. We talked about when Nathan was saying yesterday that Luis Garcia sucks. And I said I'd like to have a number 4 starter that has 12 or 13 wins and an ERA in the 4s.
It was good yesterday.
Yep. And, the Astros won that one. I look for Javier to get over 6.5 strikeouts here. I mean, he's punched out at least 8 in, I think, 3 of his last 4. And let's face it, Tampa Bay still can't hit half the time.
Yep.
Charlie Morton over 7.5 strikeouts. He's facing Washington. There's no Josh Bell. There's no Juan Soto. Some of those guys look like they should be hitting with wiffle ball bats. And then Gibson over 4.5 strikeouts because he rotates in duds where he strikes out 2 and then he'll strike out 11 and then he'll strike out 2 and then he'll strike out 11 and then he'll strike out 3 and then he'll strike out 8. So I'm going to just mix it in the middle and say he gets to 5.
Fair enough. But either way, if all of those hit, then you make either $291,000 or you take the Reds on the run line and it pays out $417,000. In other words, you retire on the spot if you hit that parlay. But anyway,
you send all the money to the Me Foundation so I can get better stuff.
I prefer the human fund personally, but
still, well, that one works too.
Yeah, but either way, we'll be back once again tomorrow to break down the Wednesday card. Spoiler, it will also only be baseball, is what it is. But until next time, good luck to all of you.
We'll have college football and the NFL. So
that is true. But until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.